This call is being recorded.
Damn, Big Brother is trying to listen in again.
Why is he always listening in? I told him to mind his own business.
All right, well, this is Two Loco Radio. This is Ray Ray.
And this is Chrissy D.
And we're joined tonight by the phenomenal DJ, MC, Jack Nickelz.
Salutations, everybody. Salutations and good greetings and all that lovely, proper stuff.
And who knows who's going to, come in, come out. We don't know yet.
No, we don't.
But we do know this is a crazy fun Friday.
Yes, it is.
Yes, indeed.
So before we get to the crazy fun, though, we're going to talk about something real.
And sad.
I mean, it's all over the news right now that,
the internet.
Yeah, that a girl died, at Johnathan Law in Milford, Connecticut and whatnot.
The story that I got from a woman whose daughter goes to Johnathan Law said that it was the girl had been asked to the prom by her ex-boyfriend. And she had turned the ex-boyfriend down because she had a new boyfriend. She was going to go with him, I guess. And the ex-boyfriend was so mad that she wouldn't go to the prom with him that he actually took and choked her. Pushed her down flight of stairs, choked her, and then stabbed her repeatedly in the neck. She died. She wound up bleeding out. My friend's daughter now, who goes to that school, is now so terrified that her, and I'm sure probably many other Johnathan Law parents, I don't know about all of them, but I can speak for this one person that they're talking about homeschooling their kids. That's how scared they are to send their kids to school. That's sad.
Well, what's your opinion on this, Jack?
I've always believed that there's supposed to be at least two places your kids should be safe in. One is your house, and the other should be school. And, we've seen so many violent incidents happen at school now. It's starting to make me wonder if we really should think about arming security guards and being more stricter with searches and, being a little bit more stricter when it comes to screening what could be troubled kids. Some precautions have to be taken because it's now becoming a reoccurring thing where there's violence in the school.
My take on it is if they never showed that freaking, Columbine shit, this shit would have never happened. Ever since then, all we've seen is fucking all kinds of crazy shit.
Violence. In the one place, like you said, one of the two places a child should be safe. Now they can't. It's so bad that not even the grammar school kids are safe. I mean, if I was in Connecticut, I'm sorry, but I hate to say it. If I was still living in West Haven, my son would be homeschooled.
Here's the scary thing. We're only finding out about these certain instances like Milford and all these other places. Just imagine how many things have gone on that we don't know, that get covered up because schools don't want to ruin their reputation or have the stigma of having violence happen in school and then have parents pull their kids out. There's probably thousands and thousands of things that go on that we don't know about. And that's the part that really scares me.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially when, your kids get to be school age. I'm sure you're getting to be where you're kind of nervous. I'm sure your wife's nervous, too, about sending your kids to school.
It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. You want to... I've had, we've all had some type of violence in school. We've gotten into fights and things of that nature. And, I almost find myself sounding like an old man when I go, when I used to, have issues at school, we fought, and then that was pretty much the end of that. And now it's almost like you want your child to stand up for themselves when they're getting picked on or when they're getting harassed and things of that nature. But now you're almost scared to tell your child, stand up for yourself because you don't know how people will react anymore. And, with a situation like this where a girl just, out of respect for her current boyfriend, didn't want to, go to the prom with her ex, which is something that, it's a rejection. I've been rejected for prom dates many of times. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure everybody has. But the difference between school violence when we were kids and now is there's stabbings and shootings. There was none of that when we were in school. It was fist fights. That's it. You fist fought, you cussed at each other, and that was it.
That's not true, but
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like the middle, like Milford, Orange, West Haven. I don't know about West Haven, but Milford and Orange was never really. There were never stabbings and shootings and stuff. And now Johnathan Law. That's crazy.
It's you see, you slowly starting to see, and I've always said we've raised a bunch of soft kids who can't handle rejection, can't handle being told no. You know, and I've seen many times, you know, you go shopping and, you know, a mother tells her son that no, you can't have this, and the son spazzes out, starts cursing at the mother and hitting the mother, throwing a tantrum on the floor. And, you know, in my head, I'm like, when I was younger, if something like that happened, I'd get beaten half to death. My parents would beat me right in front of the store, and that would be the end of it. And it seems like we have been so soft on these kids that the idea of rejection now is almost life-threatening now. It's like, you know, you can't tell a child no or their whole world will change. And I've read the paper and I've heard, you know, a grandmother tell a grandson no and the grandson, you know, stabs the grandmother. A mother, you know, turns off the video game on the son and the son beats her in the head. You know, it's just all this weird stuff and you're like, you know, where do we go wrong? Where do we go wrong where violence is now the acceptable response for rejection? You know, it always makes me scared that, you know, what happens if these kids make it to the real world where rejection is almost commonplace?
I'm sorry, I have no clue. I mean, I know even when my son, who's 14, when he was a baby, if I told him no, it was no. He threw a 2-second fit, and I just gave him a look, and he knew better than to do anything worse. And he would be like, "Okay, mommy."
But
go ahead.
I don't want to go and say this is brand new.
No, it's not brand new.
And you know everything. Because as you said, there's a lot of things we don't hear about. I know a story. I had you know, neighbors. They lived right downstairs from me. And this was out in New Haven when I lived out there. And one of the boys, they were big dudes too. But one of the dudes ended up going to Wilbur Cross, and he was looking at somebody else's girl, and they automatically they shot and killed him, and they blamed it on the race card.
One of my pet peeves, and I work with kids, you know, when I'm not doing my music, and I see this every day with parents, is no one wants to take responsibility for, you know, the actions of their child. It's always not my child. Well, what did someone do to get them started? There's always it's like a parent has to validate their child's violence, and they just refuse to say, well, maybe there's something wrong with your child. You know, maybe that's the problem. And the more you ignore it, the worse it gets. And these are situations where you when you think back, when you look at these children that do all this stuff and you think back, there are telltale signs that people see. Like with the Columbine thing, there were telltale signs that something wasn't right with these children. There were telltale signs. You know, whether it's you become withdrawn, you're increasing violent, you know, you're playing heavily violent video games, or, you know, you start ordering stuff off the internet that you know you shouldn't be ordering, like guns and knives and blades. There are things that tip you off. And when nobody notices that, when no one picks up on those telltale signs, when parents don't step in and nip it in the bud, then when something happens, the first thing they want to do is they want to say, well, you know, the child was listening to Tupac the other day, and that's what influenced him to do it, or the child was playing Halo, and that influenced him to do it, or the child was watching such and such movie with violence in it, and that's what happened. And, you know, to be honest, I know a whole generation of people that grew up on Roy Rogers shooting guns and the Long Rangers shooting guns and
Yeah,
GI
exactly.
shooting guns. And, I've yet to go out and repeatedly stab somebody. My grandfather, who grew up, in the civil rights era, was a naval officer, the violence was almost a part of their culture when it came to their normal viewings from, Roy Rogers to John Wayne. And he's never stabbed anybody. So it's almost like eventually you parents, and I'm a parent, I take responsibility. If my child does something, I go, okay, it's my fault because I've allowed my child to think this is okay. I need to stop this. I need to step in. And that's what parents need to do. And nowadays, I hate to say it, some of these parents don't do it. Therefore, you have your child running wild and running rampant, and then when something happens, you want to blame the system or blame what happens or blame an artist or a corporation when it could have easily been stopped if you would have stepped in when you saw something strange happen and stepped in and talked to your child.
Exactly. When your child does something wrong, you're right. As a parent, we need to step in and say, hey, Johnny, or hey, Jack, whatever the kid's name is, you need to, this behavior is not acceptable. Exactly. I mean, too many parents do brush it under the carpet. That's the problem with it. That's why these kids are so violent. I mean, if I ever seen my son ordering a gun off the internet or a knife or something showed up at our house, oh, you better bet I'd step in. And he knows it. See, that's why my son wouldn't do that shit. Well, as far as I know, he wouldn't. Knock on wood, he hopefully wouldn't. Because I would step right in and be like, no. I wouldn't accept that crap, and he knows it.
I think what needs to happen is the school system and the parents need to, we've fallen back on letting other people do discipline and other people set tones. And, we have situations where corporations are taking over the school system and, regulating the rules. It needs to go back to when, your mother knew your teacher, and before you got home, your mother knew everything that you did in school because the teacher and your mother had a good relationship. The school and the parents worked hand in hand.
Exactly.
There was some type of connection. I remember the days where I got in trouble in school, and as I'm walking home, neighbors would stop me and discipline me. And then when I got home, I knew I had some discipline from a parent, from an uncle, a grandfather, an auntie, because the whole neighborhood, everybody worked together to make sure that children were good. And we, in the digital era, we become so separated. There's no interaction. So, you can have a neighbor next door and not know them, and that neighbor may have more interaction with your child than you do, and they may see more stuff than you do, but you will never know what they see because we don't communicate anymore.
It's very true. You're very right about that.
Not only that, they don't know how to speak to each other anymore. The kids I'm sure you can relate. The kids nowadays, they just want to sit around a table and text each other. It's ridiculous.
Well, not only that, but I think even the parents don't know how to communicate anymore. It's not like when you said, like when we were kids, we had neighbors yelling at us when we were bad, or, our mothers already had a report, because by the time I got home from school, let me tell you something, I've gotten in trouble in junior high. Before I got home, my mother knew exactly what happened and what I did wrong. And they don't do that anymore. Parents don't talk to the teachers. Teachers don't talk to the parents. Neighbors don't bother stepping in and saying, hey, well, I saw Johnny doing this, or I saw Johnny doing that, or, whatever. And that's not like that anymore.
Well, like Ray said, we've lost the interaction. We've lost, once, people started getting the smartphones and social media became big, we lost that social interaction. Now, I had this same conversation with a teacher the other day. When I grew up, we had family dinner. And thankfully, my family still does that. Every Sunday, we sit down and, we all eat with each other and we talk. That's not even a stable and a normal family anymore. Like, actually, think about, everybody who's listening, think about the last time outside of holidays, reunions, marriages, anniversaries, and birthdays, just a normal day. When was the last time you sat down with your entire family and just talked? Not text each other, not keep looking at the phone, not watch TV, but just sit down around a table, having food, and conversating with each other. And you'd be surprised, not that many people do that anymore. So
You're exactly right about that, because the last time I can remember sitting down with my mother and my mother's sister, my aunt, and my cousins was when we were kids, other than holidays.
that interaction is gone. I mean, even as, I tell parents, put your kids in sports, because you put them in sports or you put them in some type of activity or after school club, it forces them to interact. But half these kids now, like Ray said, Ray made a good point. These kids will get on, the Xbox or the PlayStation to talk to each other that way. So text each other. It's got to a point where to actually have human contact is damn near a rarity in any social setting. I mean, you don't even have to go on really go and court a girl, like, go and pursue a girl like you want to, because you can just go on her Facebook page and leave her messages and build a relationship that way. Now, how many times have we seen that? The whole catfish thing where people build these relationships online now because they don't have to have that face-to-face interaction, so they build these relationships online with people that may or may not be who they say they are, and all this madness. To be personable now is just it's a lost cause, a lost art.
Exactly. I mean, I agree with you exactly about that. The world's just so messed up, it's not even funny. I mean, it's true. That's why in my household we have family dinners pretty much almost every night, except for the nights Ray works. But Nick and I still have dinner together. We still do prayer every night. And he also is allowed only normally, except for tonight's an unusual night, he only gets an hour a night on the Xbox. Either the Xbox One or the Xbox 360. He gets one or the other, and he doesn't get more than an hour, because I'm not going to have him be one of those zombie kids.
Kids, they get hooked up on this, the digital world, and they lose the ability to separate, reality from the fantasy world that they're so used to interacting to all these people. And I can see why. If you're not interacting with people on a daily basis and you're doing more interaction when you're playing, your video games, of course, when a child gets into a real-world setting, he's going to think by fantasy world rules, because that's where he gets most of his interaction. That's where he gets most of his information. Of course, if someone's, is bullying them, he's going to snap and beat up on the person who's bullying them, because in his game, when someone attacks you, you attack them back.
Very true.
And his friends are in his ear validating it like, yeah, you got that guy. He's never going to bother you again. And then next you know, that transfers into the real world, and then that's how they act. And as long as you let that go, I tell parents, sit down with your child. It's okay if they play a violent video game. My son, plays violent video games with me. We play games with each other, and we know, and I make sure that he understands that this is a game. Nothing that happens in this game will happen in real life. And he knows that. I let him know. And when he's able to, talk to me, he's like, well, I just played this game. I was like, well, it's not real. It may have, be set in real-world settings, but it's not real. No one's going to drive a car off the top of a building, then jump out the car, land on a plane, land the plane, jump into a boat, crash the boat into a submarine, and then swim 5 million miles to save a princess. It's just not going to happen.
You must be talking about Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but at least your son knows the difference between real world and fake. Like, we don't let our son play a lot of video games that are violent, because he sometimes isn't able to separate reality from fantasy, because I don't know if it has to do with his learning disability or it's just him, but until he starts to show us that he can, unless one of us is playing with him or is in the room with him, he doesn't play any of those.
But you guys recognize the problem. See, that's where a lot of parents fall flat on. Some parents would see that issue and then dismiss it to, well, maybe we need to put them in a special class, and they won't step in and go, you know what, until you can make the distinction between the two, we're going to, scale back input of these type of games. Parents are not doing that. Thankfully, you're doing that, so you're nipping things in the bud before they grow out of control. But a lot of parents, they don't do that. They don't do that. Okay, well, maybe he's just very imaginative and very creative, or he's just hyper, or he has ADHD, or we've come up with. I saw this picture, and it shows side by side things from when we were young compared to things when kids were young. And if someone says likes to be alone, and some kids just like to be alone. They like to stay away from other kids because they like to do their own thing. That's now labeled depression. Or if a kid's very energetic, that's labeled hyperactive. Or if a kid has, this thing going on with them, it's now been given a clinical definition, a clinical word, and a diagnosis and a treatment. And it's
followed by medication too. Don't forget.
Yeah. They load the kids up on medication. It's like, when I was a little too hyper, my mom put her hand to my butt, and that seemed to calm me down for whatever length of period that I needed to calm down from, and I was good. There are legitimate things that I understand you need treatment for. Dyslexia, any type of learning disability, any type of a mental disability, stuff like that, I understand you need to have treatment and special routines and programs for. But something as simple as, well, my child is, wearing black lipstick and eyeshadow and painting his fingernails black, and he's listening to death metal. Okay, your child just is into the whole goth thing. That's actually a culture. Instead of just going, take him to the psychiatrist, give him some pills, make him a zombie so he can just, do on command and routines like a damn trained dog. Step in and figure out maybe there's a reason why your son or daughter has gone to the gothic nature. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's something going on at school. Maybe there's something that's going on at home that you don't know about. Trying to step in and talk to your child. And yes, they're going to be combative. They're going to be resistant. But if you talk to them and figure out why they're doing these certain things, you won't need to spend $600, $800, $900,000 for a therapist just to say, yeah, put them on these pills, put them on that pill, let's increase your insurance, and you're good to go.
Exactly. And you know what? Not only that, but the goth thing, it's just a phase kids go through. My goddaughter went through it. My goddaughter's just fine now. She's gotten out of it now. She went through it for a little while. It was just something she went through because it was, I guess, maybe it was popular in her school. I don't know, but she grew out of it after a while.
Well, people forget about that. People forget that, talking to your kids is the best way to solve problems, and realizing that some things are just phases.
Mm-hmm.
If your child decides that he doesn't want to play sports, that doesn't mean anything. That just means he doesn't want to play sports. Maybe down the line he'll get back into sports. But people, like I said, we become so soft on these kids that the slightest change in the behavior or something different that your child does that you didn't do starts to spark these crazy images of your child going crazy, or my child knows how to match his pants and his shirt and his socks, so he must be gay. It's like we just, as soon as something happens, we give these crazy ideas, and then we start thinking that all this stuff is happening. And maybe your child just is a good dresser. Maybe that's just it. Your child knows how to dress.
Yeah, I think people forgot that labels belong on jars, not people.
Exactly. I mean, not only that, but you know what? Maybe the father's a really good dresser, and maybe the mother's taught the child from the time it was small. Hey, this is how you match these pair of pants to this shirt, and see how the socks match, and that looks good. So some kids just know how to do that because they watch their parents. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. Our son is ADHD, and he's hyperactive, and he's also learning disabled. So he does have learning disabilities, but I refuse to put him on medication. I had him on before when he was younger. I took him off, and they keep trying to get me to put him back on. I refuse. There's no way I'm going to make my kid walk around like a zombie. No way.
But people keep forgetting medication doesn't cure the problem.
And sometimes it makes it fucking actually worse.
Yep.
I remember I was on Ritalin and I was on Prozac, and when I was on it, I was calm. But the minute I got pissed off, I would throw chairs and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, my son was on medication, and He wasn't sleeping right. He wasn't eating right. He wasn't doing good in school. Nothing. He's done a lot better since he's gotten off of it as far as sleeping right and stuff.
Well, people really need to realize this. Medication, like I said, medication doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't end any problems. All it does is it pushes it to the side. Think of medication like alcohol. When people drink away their problems, they're not really drinking away their problems. They're just getting drunk to the point that they forget about their problems. Guess what happens when you stop taking the medicine? The problem comes back. Nothing's changed. And that's with medication. With medication, if a child stops taking the medication, the symptoms will come back and the child will act the same or even worse than they were before you put them on medication. That doesn't change anything. It doesn't stop anything. And parents and doctors and medical facilities have gotten to use to just writing prescription scripts for everybody, that no one is getting down to fixing core root of the problems. Maybe your child is lashing out because he doesn't feel loved at home. Well, talk to your child and figure out why he doesn't feel loved at home. Talk to your children. And, sometimes your children will have, like, these amazing fantasy stories that they tell you about what's happening. And sometimes you got to, as a parent, be able to separate the fantasy from reality when you talk to your child. But talking to your child and kind of getting to the core root of the problem does more than just, going, well, either avoiding it by saying, well, my child went through that, there must be something wrong, or let me just put him on medicine, and then every time he starts acting crazy, I'll just keep putting medicine. You know what you're doing when you medicate your child? And, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I really don't give two shits. I'm a grown-ass man. When you put your child on medication, you are creating an addict. And people don't think of it that way because they don't see the connection. But what you are doing is you're training your child to, when he gets a certain way, that he needs to be medicated in order to function. That is the same mentality of a drug addict. A drug addict will take drugs in order to get through the normal day.
Very true. Very true.
To self-medicate themselves.
They self-medicate themselves. You're doing the same thing when you medicate your child, except your child is not old enough to go out and get that hit of crack or get that heroin to put in their veins. So you go and you get them that Ritalin, you get them that Prozac, and you get them hooked on these drugs that they think they need in order to survive. And all you are doing is creating more addicts. And then you wonder why, when children get older, they can't handle anything because you don't give them a chance to. You just throw them on drugs and so something happens, so they never learn how to handle stuff. So all they know is drugs. No drugs, snap. Drugs. No drugs, snap. They don't go, stop, breathe, think of the situation, figure out a solution. They don't think that because we just took those whole options out and just put pills in their hands. And that's how I do it.
Here's the deal, though. It's just not kids anymore, man. How many people or I don't know if you know any, but I know tons of people that go on social media sites to, the date or whatever. They never meet the person, but they get pissed off if somebody says something about it.
Oh, I've seen, like I said, there's a show on MTV called Catfish, and it always surprised me because we see these people and they build these just complex and intricate relationships with people that they never, ever meet.
Yep, and they say that they love each other and all that, and I'm like, huh? How do you love somebody you've never met? I watched the show.
Yeah, that's from the old school. If I don't see you, I'm not sending you money. The only people I send money to who I don't see are my bill collectors. My bills I pay without having to see the person who I'm giving the money to. But I see these people they'll hook up with these guys or hook up with these girls and fall in love and that'll be their main person. They live around that person and they'll send them tons and tons and tons of money. Here, take this, take that, take that, take that. And at the end of the day, they honestly don't know who they are sending money to, who they are sending these. It's funny. People always wonder why their pictures of themselves nude or doing crazy stuff get put on the internet. Well, it's because you send them to people that you don't damn well know. Just because you've been talking to someone online for 2 or 3 years and they say they love you and you love them and they claim to send you pictures or they claim they can't do things like that until you do something, so they know that you really love them, and then you get stupid enough and you send them a picture of your Wahoo. And if you wonder why everybody in your town now knows that you shave with a landing strip, and you're trying to figure out how that happened. Well, because you're sending them to people that you don't know. Come
exactly. I mean, how could you send pictures? Then the pictures that you are seeing of these person, it's like if I'm on a dating website and I see a picture of, let's say, some guy and he claims to be you. Now he sends me a picture of you, so I think, oh well, I'm talking to Jack Nickelz. Wow, cool. Oh, he seems like a cool dude. Now, I of course would never go on a dating website, but I'm just saying for an example. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How do you know that that's the person you're really talking to? You don't.
I tell people, in the day now where you have all these webcams, there is no excuse why you should be talking to someone online and not know that that person is who they are. Because as soon as you go, hey, can we chat on Skype and see each other, and they go no, and they come up with an excuse, that is a red flag. And that's common sense stuff. It is common sense stuff, and it's surprising that I've seen people become more attached and more involved with people they meet online over the internet than they do with people who they see every day. I bet you there's someone out there right now who works with 2 or 3 people that they know nothing about. But if you ask them about their buddy that they know on the internet that they type to every day, they can tell you everything about them, or that they think they know about them. And it's like, is this backwards, Lee? Are we now just we're just going to close our eyes and just hand everything over to a random person now? Is that the thing now? Is it no longer smart to say, you know what, if I don't know you, I can't really, interact with you because I don't know who you are? We become very warped, and it's scary.
Because people had bad experiences in real life or whatever. It's like an online bar basically. And it's not just dating sites. It's like any social media site can end up a dating site or end up, a buddy system site where you're never going to meet anybody. But in your head, you've known these people all your life.
Exactly. And you don't know anything about them. I mean, my friend met somebody online, and I thought she was crazy. The dude was from North Carolina or South Carolina, and she lived in Connecticut. And she went and took a bus all the way to North Carolina or South Carolina, wherever the heck the dude lived, and to meet this guy, and was going to stay at his house with him and his parents. First red flag came up. I'm like, oh, no, you don't do that. She went and did it. Stupid. It was a stupid mistake because things didn't even end up working out between her and the guy, and you know what? It was sad. She ended up getting hurt in the end.
Well, like I said, people just, and I understand what Ray says, where people have such bad experiences in real life that they've turned to this online world. Well, guess what? The people in your online world are real people. So they abide by the same rules as the real life. So even though Jimmy Joe John, who you met on Facebook, seems to be a nice guy, guess what? There is a 50-50 chance that he could be an asshole just like your ex-boyfriend. There's no way to escape those odds. And I try to tell, I don't know a bunch of girls who get into these little online relationships. I tell them, what makes you think that he's not an asshole like the last guy you dated was an asshole? Oh, because he's online? That doesn't mean anything.
No, it doesn't.
How many times have you watched the news and we've seen online predators who, start talking to these kids and trying to convince them to do all this weird ass shit? That happens in the online world that bleeds over to the real world. So there's no real hiding place. And I hate to say it like that because it sounds like I'm very pessimistic, but there's no real hiding place. If someone's going to be a jackass to you, guess what? There's nothing you can do to avoid that. They're going to be a jackass to you. It doesn't matter if you run to the online world. It doesn't matter if you run to Dubai. It doesn't matter if you move to Connecticut, you move to Jacksonville. It doesn't matter. If someone's going to be an asshole to you, they're going to be an asshole to you no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing.
Exactly.
Life.
Exactly. Not only that, but you know what it comes down to too? A lot of it comes down to, and I hate to say it, a lot of women, I don't, maybe guys too. I don't know too much about for guys, but women, I know we run on emotion. So a lot of women are so insecure about themselves because of their weight, or they don't like their hair, they don't like their eye color, they don't like this or that about themselves, and they feel very insecure. And that's where these media sites get hold of these people, and they just lure them right online to come, meet these weirdos. And you don't know, like you said, they're sexual predators, or some guy that's a real jerk. He's going to treat you like a jerk, just like the ex-boyfriend or the father or the brother or whoever treated you crappy in your life. You know what I'm saying?
Well, listen, as much as I want to say that's strictly a women thing, I can't, because guys, and I tell girls this all the time, we're very simple creatures. So if you compliment us and you look good, that is almost like getting a gold bar to put in your banking account. So that's why you have all these guys who get these girls who just seem like so amazingly beautiful, and they start talking to the guy. They go, "Oh my God, you look so good and you're so funny. I don't understand why girls aren't with you." And they soup up the ego, and next thing you know, the guy is sending tons and tons of money to the girl. The next thing you know, the girl disappears. They don't know where they're at, and the guy can never get in contact with her, can never get his money back. It goes both ways,
Oh, exactly. But I can only speak for the women because I'm a woman. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
That's more for the guys to speak.
Well, thankfully, in my relationship with Ray, since I met him online, he hasn't asked for any money, and he hasn't been a douchebag to me, and he hasn't stalked me or been a predator. So he's one of the good experiences I had, and so have you. I don't want people to think that all online connections are bad. Some online connections are good. But, gotta be careful.
Yeah, exactly what I was just going to say. You have to be careful who you're meeting and, what kind of people you're interacting with. Because, like I said, since we've known you online, you're a great guy, and, and we enjoy talking to you. And, that's just the way I feel. You're not a predator. You're not asking for money. You're not, what I'm saying, stalking us either.
But I don't blame the people in general. And I'm going to say this real quick.
Nobody's blaming people. We're just saying it. People, we are human beings. We have feelings, and sometimes we tend to run like women. Well, women I can speak for. I can't speak for a guy. We run off our emotions.
All right. As I was stating before you chimed in, which is normal, I don't just blame the normal people. I blame corporations, because the corporations don't give a fuck. The corporations will put ads up. They'll see that you like somebody, or you like somebody's photo, and then next you're going to have all kinds of models saying, okay, well, join this dating site and join over here and do this and do that. And they don't give a fuck because they're making money.
Oh yeah, you're definitely correct. Corporations, people need to understand is corporations make money off your misery, and then they make money off your supposed happiness. And they'll go, and just like Ray says, they'll go and they'll put all these ads on there, hot girls looking for normal guys, or, they do things. People don't understand how deep this stuff runs. I mean, there are whole departments and companies dedicated to surfing the internet and figuring out patterns that people follow, and figure out, just what gets someone going, what catches their attention. There are people whose main job is to study you like a damn animal in a zoo. And they study you, and they figure out your patterns, they figure out everything that they need to know, and then they tailor ads
Exactly.
to you. They tell everything to you. So Ray's right. Part of it is the corporation. And then until we actually step up and start doing stuff, the corporations are going to continue to do it. As long as we play the good dog and we accept everything they throw at us, nothing will ever change. So Chrissy's right and Ray's right. It's a 50-50 thing. As much as people want to blame the corporation, they have to hold themselves accountable, because, you have to use common sense. But in the same token, corporations need to stop feeding off the misery and the tricking and the gimmicking of the community and the people. You know, it's like it's so funny when you think about it, because how many times have you been on a website and you've been shopping online, you're looking for stuff, and you may click a few things here and there, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden you get these emails about exactly what you were looking at, almost as if someone knew you were looking for something. And
exactly.
Or you get these pop-ups. But also, I know even from watching like late night TV, I'm up late at night sometimes, and I'll see like all these sites. Oh, well, call this 1-800 number and you could talk to beautiful females in your area, or you could talk to gorgeous men in your area. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And you'll see it a bunch of times, different ones. I see quite a few of them on there.
But Jack, you're totally right. You are absolutely right when you're saying that they feed off people's emotions and misery. Because say, for example, if somebody has, a significant other and they work, a job away from home and they're gone for weeks at a time or weekends at a time or whatever the case may be, and they're lonely because they don't get to talk to their people or whatever, and they see this on the TV, or they go on, these social medias, and they, they're curious. As humans, we want to test our curiosity and, say, okay, we always, think to ourselves, okay, well, what if my life was this way or that way and everything, and, want to, test the fire. Even though we're not supposed to play in the fire, as humans, we fuck up.
Or we, or we say, gee, you know what? I'm a little curious about this website over here. You know what? I'm going to kind of just look. My significant other's at work, or he's just not around, or he's sleeping or whatever. So you know what? I'm going to test my curiosity, and I'm going to look real quick while he's not looking. And that's what happens too.
Well, we as human beings, we're very curious, and I don't care what anybody says, and I see a lot of posts on it, I'm happy to be single. People want that connection. They want to have someone to share things with. That's just a basic nature. And companies know this, and they prey on that. They're hoping that one night where your husband or your wife may not be home and you guys may have had a fight, or he may be gone for, she may be gone for a long period of time. They're preying on that, and they're hoping on that, so then they can go, okay, this is the perfect time, let's flash. And they, like I said, they can pick these things up. They have people who say they pick these things up. You can tell by the stuff you do on the internet how your life is going. So give me a perfect example. Say Ray is a trucker, and at the end of every month, Ray has to go on the truck run, and he's gone for like a week. The way he's gone, Chrissy's activity on the internet increases because she has nothing else to do. People know this. They study this, and they go, okay, when the beginning of the month is here, up until the last week, she's not on the internet that much. But then that last week, she's just on there heavy. Maybe she's chatting with her friends a lot more than normal. Well, they put two and two together and go, oh, she's lonely. So
there you go.
It always seems that time when you are lonely, all those ads pop up. It's because they got people who just study people for just months and months and months. It's funny, I was watching the show was Family Guy. And Family Guy had an episode about that where, they studied one of their neighbors to get who was like the typical dumb, and they studied him and they watched him and they watched his habits, and they turned around and they started investing in the stuff that he seemed to cling to when he got loneliest. Because they figured out if one lonely guy is like that, every lonely guy is like that. This is where we're going to make our money at. And that's just what they do in real life. And it's not that, okay, maybe the woman shouldn't be doing that or the man shouldn't be doing that. It's going to happen. We're curious people. What happens is it's hard to say, okay, I don't want to look at this site when it just flashes at you 24/7. No matter what you do, you could turn around and say, you know what, I'm not going to get on the computer. I'm going to stay away. Next thing you know, your phone goes off. There's an email. What's that email from? From that site saying, come look at all the pretty ladies. Come look at all the pretty guys. And you stop and say, okay, I don't want to look at that. And then you go on your TV. Come look at all the pretty ladies. Come look at all the pretty guys. You turn your TV off. You turn the radio on. Come look at the pretty ladies. Come look at the pretty guys. You can't go anywhere. You turn that off. You go outside. What's on the billboard? Come look at the pretty ladies. Come look at the pretty guys. Don't get a book.
You got that right.
At the pretty guys. There's nowhere you can go on this planet where you won't see, come look at the pretty ladies. Come look at the pretty guys.
And then after going through all that, you're out there, you know, just doing normal housework or whatever, and like you know, a pretty lady walks by, or you know, a hot guy for the, you know, ladies out there.
Exactly.
It's like I tell people, it's hard to say no to something that is constantly in your face. It's just like a girl who is told she's ugly. She could be the prettiest girl in the world, but if everybody keeps telling her that she's ugly, guess what? She's going to feel ugly. And there's nothing you can do about that to change that, because it's that reinforcement. It's almost like hypnotizing. It's the same thing with the dog and the dinner bell. Every time the dog hears the bell and someone puts out dinner, after a while they start thinking, when I hear the bell, it's dinner time. So no matter what they do from now on, whenever they hear a bell, they're running thinking it's going to be dinner. And that's how advertisers have trained us. They've trained us now to think that to be happy, we have to be doing these things, and we have to look this way. Or, you know, you can't really avoid, you know, the pretty people. You know, pretty people are everywhere. It's almost like a monster movie. Don't look around the corner. Don't look at your TV. Don't go outside. The pretty people are there waiting for you.
Exactly. I mean, exactly.
True.
Not only that, but if it's not a pretty girl or a handsome guy or whatever, it's that, oh, well, you go outside and you have to look this way, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. It's exactly how it is. Unfortunately, it's sad. I mean, there are a lot of women that do not feel good about themselves, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys that don't feel really good about themselves because they see all this and they figure, oh, why? I have to look this way or I have to look that way, like you said. But also they put it out there where, oh, well, you have to buy this and you have to have this and you have to have this kind of money and you have to have this kind of job and you have to drive a nice car. You know what I'm saying? They put all those ideas in our head so people actually believe it.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's we have become brainwashed to think whatever we see on publication, whether it's print, TV, or internet, to be the standard bearer. And that's the problem. And when you start to really break it down, the images that they show only promote what the corporate entities are selling. You know, it's not like, okay, we want you to look this way. I can see one thing. If you're overweight and your doctor's telling you you need to slim down because it's bad for your heart and your body, that's one thing. I understand that because it's a health issue. But when someone's going, hey, you need to slim down so you can fit into a new pair of apple-bottom jeans and look like the bomb when you go to the club, then it's like, you know, that's not really what you should be doing because they're only telling you to do it to push a product. They're not telling you to do it because they're concerned about, you know, your blood pressure or your diabetes or anything like that. They're only concerned with they need you to slim down so you can go out and buy these $100 pair of jeans so you can wear them one time at a club where it's dark and no one can tell that you're wearing the goddamn $100 jeans.
Exactly.
Very true.
That's exactly how it is. It's not like they're going to say, well, gee, so-and-so, you gained a few extra pounds, you know, maybe you ought to try to slim down a little just, you know, so you don't get too heavy and you don't have health problems. You're right. They don't give a shit. They want you to just buy their product. Like you said, to wear it one time, nobody will ever know you even work, in a club especially.
It's and that's just how it is. and it's gotten to a point where you can't even, like, you do something like, okay, I want to get a tattoo, and people say, oh my God, I can't believe you're getting a tattoo, that's so this or that's so that, and, how are you going to be able to do this with a tattoo? And it's no matter what you do, people will have an opinion, and those opinions cannot even be valid. Sometimes people will take these opinions that they heard on the radio and say, okay, that's why you shouldn't do this, because I heard this on this radio station, or I heard this on this news station. Well, I want to homeschool my child. Well, you shouldn't do that, because most kids that are homeschooled, they lose social interaction, and they are dumber than the kids that go to school. Well, how do you know that? Did you do research? No, I heard that on such and such television, on such and such channel, and he said that. Well, how do you know he's right? Well,
Exactly.
we all on these shows, how do we know these people are right? Like, because to me, you always have that one person who's for something and then one person who's against something, and they both have equal facts supporting their claim. So how do you know which one is right? Because on one hand, the person who's for the stuff has a lot of good reasons why you should be for it. But then on the flip side, the person who's against it has the equal amount of reasons why you should be against it. So it's like, how do you know what they're let's go past the fact that they have their pros and cons. How do you know what they're saying is right for you? Because everybody is different, So it's mind-boggling, to say the least.
All right. We're going to change the subject a little bit.
Okay.
I want to know, because we've already stated, what our opinion about it. But as of next year, 2015, Amazon is going to be, doing a thing where you get your stuff right away in like 30 minutes via a drone. How do you feel about drones being dropped from places?
Okay. The conspiracy theorist in me is saying that that's just a cover to give them a reason to have GPS locations on everybody. And these drones are nothing more than placeholders for if something is to ever go down, they can systematically wipe out a certain section of people in a certain section of neighborhoods without there causing any big hoopla about it. And they can always say, well, we had this information due to the fact that Amazon was using all these droids to drop stuff off. That's the conspiracy theorist in me. That's me seeing people looking at me through the shadows and aliens putting brainwave beams in my head. That's what he thinks. The logical person in me goes, impossible. That's too many drones to have at a time where that's signals that get crossed because you have so many drones going at one point. Think about this. Within 1 minute of the time we're talking, close to, a few 100,000 people are ordering on Amazon right now.
Very true.
So think about the amount of drones you have to have running at this exact minute right now. Now, let's go deeper. Think about the size these drones would have to be. If you go on Amazon and you order a treadmill, no little ass drone is going to carry that. You need a big ass drone to carry that. Okay, now what if you're ordering a treadmill, a weightlifting set, maybe a bedroom set? You're ordering a bunch of stuff. Now the sizes of the drones are getting bigger. And now you're looking at drones the size of an actual plane. Where are you going to land that plane? Let's go further than that. How much fucking space do you think we have in the air for all these drones to be flying around on top of all these planes flying around? Let's look at this logically as like we get pissed off at traffic jams on the road. Take that scenario and put it in the sky where there's no solid ground under you. So let's just say Ray, Chrissy, and Dan are taking a trip to Hawaii, and a drone smashes into the side of the friggin' plane because it's trying to get to Mexico to drop off this damn bedroom set for Pedro. These are issues that happen, and these are what's going to happen when you have planes flying around or drones flying around. I mean, just the sheer number of stuff that you have to factor in is like you're crazy. You're telling me, at one point in time, the sky is going to be filled with nothing but drones of various sizes delivering stuff?
Here's what I don't get, man. Not to cut you off, but here's what I don't get. According, they're trying to take the guns away, and I'm not trying to make this a political or a conspiracy show, but they're trying to take, the guns away. But you're going to take the guns away and then introduce drones that are well capable of having guns? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
I believe in a person's right to protect themselves. I believe that everybody competent enough should be able to own a gun if they go through everything they have to go through and they show that they have the ability to handle that responsibility. My mother is a licensed gun owner. I have friends who are licensed gun owners. And the most common sentence everybody always says, and it's the most truthful sentence, guns don't kill anybody. It's the people using the guns that kill anybody. So my ideology on this is you take the guns away from the people. Okay. So now you say we don't have the right to defend ourselves, which is a constitutional right. And I don't care how they like to flip it, what kind of statistics they like to bring in. That's a constitutional right. We should all be able to have our rights respected, and we should all be able to follow them. Now, you take those away, then you put these drones in the sky. Let me flip back to my conspiracy side. What if fucking Skynet hits? Now you got all these damn renegade drones flying around, dropping shit on houses. They're dropping beds and they're dropping dumbbells. Then it flips out and kicks out.
Very true.
Fucking running around in your neighborhood trying to avoid getting hit by a grand piano, and a drone is coming right at you. But guess what? You can't do anything because the government done took the damn guns away. So now you gotta try to beat it with a fucking plastic wiffle ball bat, and you're out there looking like a damn idiot because you can't defend yourself. And what I'm saying is very far-fetched. I hope Skynet doesn't happen. But, what the gun situation is, you have to be stricter with the gun laws. You have to be stricter with the process people have to go through. You actually have to legitimately enforce your gun laws and make sure the people who are getting these guns are people who should be having these guns. Okay? That's one thing. Taking away the guns doesn't solve the problem. Okay? It doesn't solve the problem. But best believe, if we took away all the guns in the world, people will still find ways to kill each other. Okay? It's just that people will be running at each other.
Yeah, they'll be stabbing each other in the neck.
So, we were killing each other before guns on this planet, and when guns, decide to go away, we'll still be killing each other with stuff, whether it be arrows, knives, spears. We're pretty messed up people. We figured out ways to get rid of people without having to use guns. You want to stop violence? How about educating the people? Instead of spending money on millions and millions of drones flying in the air, how about putting money into the school system? How about putting money back into jobs? There are 1,000 things you could put our money into instead of having R2-D2 flying around, dropping off your wife's pair of crotchless panties.
Exactly. Or what about having these after-school programs for these kids to have something to do so they're not out on the streets fighting and stuff? And if we're not
after-school program, let's bring back after-school arts and sports and stuff like that.
Yep.
It bugs me because it's like we do everything but put money into the problem that we have to deal with. you'll see like the government spend a bunch of money on bonuses and pay raises for government officials, yet schools are falling apart and they're losing accreditation. And it's like, okay, how come you couldn't use that money to help fix the school systems? Oh, because he feels like he should be getting more money. But isn't his concern should be the community and the stuff that goes on in the community? So shouldn't putting money back in the community be his main priority? Oh, no, he can't have that priority because he has to, please the corporations and things of that nature.
I want
to have money. Hold on one second, honey. I'm sorry. He has to have money for that Porsche or that Corvette or whatever kind of car he wants. Instead of putting money back, like you said, into this. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, I at least went to a cooking class. I took a cooking class when I was in grammar school. I took sports. I tried to play at least soccer, or I did some other thing. I did music. You know what I'm saying? I sang. I didn't exactly. I was in music. It was more like you sang in a choir, but I sang in the choir in junior high and in high school. I mean, why not bring these programs back? These were good programs for kids to be in. They felt good about themselves doing these programs. Or the plays, how the schools put on plays and stuff. This is stuff they need to have.
It's because they want to put money into the vending machines that they put in the teacher's lounge so the teachers can have, the best snacks and soda available. Who cares if, the kids are reading books where the covers are falling off and the letters are fading off the page. That's just how things are.
Or who cares that these kids are coming to school hungry? Who gives a fuck that little Johnny over there is hungry? Or little Martha had nothing for lunch because her mom couldn't afford to give her lunch money or couldn't afford to make her lunch. I mean, as a lunch person, why can't you stop up and say, hey, how come you don't have lunch, little girl? What's going on, And then say to the little girl, hey, here, I'll give you a sandwich. So at least you have something to eat because these kids go to school hungry. A lot of them do.
Here's what I want to know. Where the fuck is this money coming? If we're $300 zillion in debt and every other country is $300 zillion in debt, where the fuck is this money coming to come up with new shit?
Well, you just answered your own question. The money comes. Okay, let's put down a basic fact to all the listeners. This country makes money. Okay, this country makes money. Every country makes money. We print money every single day. Okay? That's why we have money printing places. We print money every single day. The problem is we have devalued the money we print. So then whatever money we get now, we've devalued it to the stock exchange and, all this fruitless stuff that we like to invest in. And the government gets these money. They go, okay, we have this money now. Senator John just passed a bill for my company to allow me to put more guns in the inner city. Now, with this extra money I have, I should put it into a gun recovery program or an educational program, but that would interfere with the gun sales of Senator Johnny. So what I'm just going to do is just give him this money because I know then when I need to have something done, he's going to have my back. And it's almost like people are just passing the buck, and nobody's depositing that damn buck. It's just getting passed around, while we're sitting here like, just power holes in the streets, street lights keep failing, we don't have enough cops on patrol, the teachers are just underpaid and undertrained. The school system's failing us. Our health care is doing the crap. They tell everybody that everybody must have insurance by this amount of time, but insurance prices are freaking insane. And if you're only making minimum wage, there's no way you could pay that $200 a month to stay on a medical insurance because that $200 a month ends up being $600 total that you got to pay to your landlord on top of whatever bills you got for utilities. So you can't spare that $200 a month. So guess what? You don't get on insurance. So they penalize you for that. And then when you need to go to the hospital or need to do something, they charge you a few $1,000s for your little hospital trip or your little checkup. So the next thing you know, you're in debt. So whatever money you get can't go into getting health insurance because you got to pay off a debt that you got for not having health insurance in the first place. You don't even know why you didn't have health insurance in the first place because it's too goddamn expensive. It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And here's the thing. We were talking about last night. Okay, it's hard enough getting a job. Okay, and it's hard enough getting fucking loans. But when you made this fucking tax now a fucking law, does that now affect your credit history? Do all the people that had previous medical expenses, does their credit get fucked up now because of a bill 15 years ago?
It's the government knows that it's done some fucked up shit. It just makes no sense. It's just like when, you just get out of high school and you get ready to go to college, and all of a sudden you get those letters, hey, you've been pre-approved for a credit card with a $2,000 limit. And you're broke, you're in college, you don't even know what $2,000 look like, but now you got this money, so now you're using it for food and clothes and paying stuff. And they say, hey, listen, when you get your bill, if you put down half of it, we'll continue to let you use the card. Not realizing that, you put down half of it, but you still have the other half that you got to pay. Then they had interest to that. And guess what? By the time you get out of school, that credit card is now your biggest debt, and you're now working to pay that damn debt off. The government knows what it's doing. It puts you in situations where you stay in debt. And the reason why they keep you in debt is that you keep giving them money. And then we as people are just we get so focused on paying the bills, or be like, damn, I can't stand these bills. I can't do this now because I have this on my credit record, or I have to do this now because there's something on my credit record. So then we start finding workarounds to get around the debt that we owe. And the problem is when we do that debt is still there. And all we're doing is building bigger and bigger debt. And just like a friend of mine used to say, as long as somebody owes me money, I'm rich. And that's how the government thinks. No matter what you do, you are going to have to pay that money back. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, you have to pay that money back. You can go live off the grid for a few years, but guess what? That debt is going to stay there. And when you decide to come back to civilization, that debt will be waiting for you. And even though stuff gets defaulted, guess what? It may be defaulted, but guess what happens? Now the credit companies are now calling you because they want that money from the default stuff that you owe. So there's no real way that you can escape any of the debt, and the government knows that, and they don't do anything to help you, because if they help you, you won't owe them money.
Yeah, that's fucked up, but that's the truth and the fact. Here's what people don't understand. What we were talking about before, with social media and the kids with texting and everything. If something fucking bad were to happen, which I have a feeling something's coming, I can't say what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know who it's ran by, and I really don't give a shit because I don't have the expenses to handle any of that. But the fact of the matter is, if something were to come, people think, okay, yeah, they're going to have warnings. They're going to be able to go on YouTube. They're going to be able to go here. They're going to be able to go there. But logically, the way I think, if there were something fucked up going to happen, they're going to shut down the phone lines. They're going to shut down the internet, and you ain't going to know shit. What do you think about that?
Well, the perfect example is there's a movie called 2012 starring John Nickelz, and it's based on the end of the world. And what happens is when the end of the world hits, the first thing they do is they take all the rich people, they take all the important people, the scientists, stuff like that, and they put them on these arcs to get them to freedom. People need to think about that. Do you really think if something like that would happen, and if we found out, it'd be crazy, but do you think that the government doesn't already have a contingency plan for that, and they haven't had, things already in place for that. And if the government knows about it, guess what? The person who's a millionaire, billionaire, they know about it too. So if you don't think they've already bought their way onto these escape arcs to get away, or, the space station in space where they can hide when the planet goes to crap, if you don't think the rich people have bought their ways into those stuff, you're fooling yourself, because they have. So guess what happens? The everyday man, the blue-collar worker, the guy who may not be a millionaire, he's just a scrap for himself. So, and these are things that we just have to realize. When you're not making money, you're on the low end of this. And when something bad happens, and trust me, there are people whose job it is to figure out, the sun dying, or, large, tidal waves crushing the cities, or food shortages, or, I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. It's called a fire sale. And that is when terrorists systematically send viruses to the computers that run power, food, and bank, and shut everything down. So pretty much taking a switch, turning the grid off with nothing working.
So kind of like live free and die hard, live free or die hard.
Exactly like that. Let me tell you something. When you see these stuff in movies, when you see all these, disaster movies and what if movies, if you don't think there isn't a guy getting paid, a large amount of money to figure out, contentiously paying for that, you're fooling yourself. Of course, these movies are nice and they're great entertainment, but there's a lot of truth that gets hidden in these movies that no one likes to talk about. They like to avoid it. And it's almost like, the common theme is when you're not rich and this stuff happens, there is a likely chance that you may not survive. But if you have a lot of money, you're able to buy your way on the places, you're able to finagle your way in.
Yeah, it's fucked up while everybody else is, left to defend for themselves. But like I said, if that time were to come, which I can see it coming at some point, I don't believe any of these fucking stupid ass conspiracies. And not that they're not, legit, and not that there can't be one, family that runs shit or a bunch of families that run shit. But the fact of the matter is nobody's going to save us. That's just my personal opinion. I don't believe there's a Robin Hood group out there. I don't care if they're playing like it is. If there's, a movie doesn't exist unless there's a good guy.
Yeah, it's you know what it is? When people do those Robin Hood groups and they do stuff like that, they do it so people so there won't be like a mass hysteria. You give the kid a shot, but you keep his eyes focused on the candy so he doesn't notice you giving him a shot. That's what that is. And, when you really think about it, when the world goes to kaput, the people who I think will be running things will be those crazy bastards who are up in the hills and they're training everybody from the grandma to the grandpa to the little kids on how to shoot, hunt, and survive off the land. Because let's be honest, if everything was shut down right now, how many of us really knows how to survive off the land?
Very true.
How many of us know how to, camp outside of the little stuff they did with the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts? How many of us could go and hunt, and legitimately hunt something, or, legitimately fish, or know how to sterilize water, or, heaven forbid, sterilize your own pee for drinking water? How many people know how to do that? How many people know how to cauterize their wound with hot steel? How many people know how to do their own stitches? How many people know how to rig a water-powered windmill to get power? How many people know that there are little potatoes on the ground that you can eat to provide substance? How many people know that you can actually eat bugs and get the same nutrients that you would eating something else? How many people know this stuff? Nobody except those survivalist freaks, some survivalist nuts who believe that everybody should be trained how to live off the land. So when everything goes to hell, I hate to say it like this because it sounds crazy, but you got to hook yourself up with a redneck. A guy who, like the guys on Duck Dynasty who eat like beaver and hunt frogs and eat frogs and shit. Everybody laughs at those guys. Oh my God, they're rednecks. They're so stupid and silly. But guess what? When shit shuts down, those be the motherfuckers who will be good to go because they already know how to live off the land. They know how to forage for food. They know how to do everything without mechanical or electronics.
Yeah, exactly. And the people that are, getting prepared for whatever, which is weird because you don't know what to prepare for. You don't know if it's going to be zombies, if it's going to be aliens, if it's going to be the government, if it's going to be martial law, if it's going to be, one group, or if it's 12 groups, if it's just everybody just fucking goes chaos. You don't know.
No. Well, see, what they do is they're smart. They can't predict what's going to happen, so they train on the most important basic skill, and that's surviving off the land, no matter what happens. Like stuff like in the movie Red Dawn where we get invaded. If stuff like that happens and we're forced out into the woods, anybody who knows how to survive in the woods, it's going to be good. If, a nuclear holocaust hits and we're forced to be underground for a little bit, and if everything finally clears, we have to come out and restart the population, guess who's going to be the people in charge? People who know how to survive off the land because they'll be able to somewhat survive in this nuclear world war.
My ass would never go underground because if you go underground and people that got guns are gonna fucking just shoot everybody.
Well, here's the thing: no matter where you go, if you know how to use a gun, that's why I said if you know how to use a gun, if you're trained, you come to power. Because as easy as it looks like to use a gun, there's a reason why people get gun training. Have you ever fired a shotgun or a regular 9mm? That's like kickback. People usually get the webbing in between the fingers clipped from the discharge. People usually knock themselves out when a gun kicks back after being fired because they don't know how to hold a gun. A gun is not that easy to use, so if you're trained, you become a power. And guess what? If you know how to use a gun, if shit ever is to go down and the people with the guns start taking over, they're going to need people who are well-equipped and able to handle a gun because you can never have too many people who know how to shoot. So you now increase your value. People don't realize that. If you could fix, if you know how to hunt, you increase your value. You know how to shoot, you increase your value. You know how to fight, you increase your value. Because when the end comes, I'm not saying that's going to come anytime soon, but when the end comes, those are going to be skills that people are going to need. No one's going to give a shit that you know how to code a website. No one's going to care that you know how to, surf or skateboard. But guess what? People are going to want to know if you know how to make clothing out of fabric. People are going to know if you know how to build and you're a carpenter. Those are skills that become valuable. But no one's going to care that, back in the days, you used to be able to draw comic books and, you know how to break dance. No one's going to care about that. No one's going to care if you're a girl and you know how to strip. Well, maybe that may be a big thing.
Woo!
that may be a big priority. But no one's going to care if you know how to paint. That's not going to be important then.
Yeah, they're gonna look at like people that know how to drive and shit, especially if you know how to drive while getting shot at.
Yeah, it's learning little things to increase your value. It's just like you gotta look at it like any other job. The more you know, the more valuable you are to your job. So as you laugh at it, taking those little camping courses, and sleeping out in the woods and learning how to survive out there, you may think, oh my God, that's so disgusting, or, it's just, a little something to learn. That shit may become valuable when it all hits the fan. I know I'm sounding like one of those crazy survival theorists now after saying that, but it's the truth.
Well, it certainly is because you don't know what to expect. I mean, who would have expected Sandy Hook and them fucking kids? And I don't care how many times they tell me it was just some dude that knew how to use a gun. The dude had to be trained in something. There's no fucking way you walk in a fucking school and do that, or that's a whole fucking conspiracy.
Well, I tell people, when you look at stuff like that, like I said before, it's things that you should notice. When stuff like that was happening. When people snap like that, and this goes for anybody, kids, adults, when you snap to that point, there are precursors to you snapping. You know, it's not like you just got up one day. You know, it's like Ray got up and has Cheerios, and in the middle of eating the Cheerios, he goes, you know what? I'm going to go to my job and shoot my boss in the face just because, you know, I like
I may have thought about it, but I mean, I mean, I would never do it to my boss. But I mean, in the past, I may have thought about it. But there's a difference between thinking about it and actually doing it.
So if you're getting to the point where you're actually thinking about shooting someone in the face, there are things that are going on in your life that is a telltale sign for that. If all of a sudden, you know, you start going to the gun range and you've never been to a gun range in your life, you know, maybe it's something that people should take notice of. If your roommate is finding you in the middle of the living room floor, butt naked, cleaning your gun, you know, staring at a blank TV, hey, that's a sign something may be not right with that person. You know, if your mother walks into your room and all over the wall it says, kill everybody in my class, guess what? That's a telltale sign that something's fucked up with your child. You know, these things just don't happen out of the blue. Nothing ever happens out of the blue. Even the stuff that we think is very random, there's a setup for it. You know, you just don't see the setup. When you find money in your pocket that you forgot was in there, there was a setup for that. You know what the setup was? You forgetting that you put money in that pocket. That was the setup for you finding the money later on. And people just, I found my key under the couch. Oh, my God, that was so unexpected. No, it wasn't. You dropped your key, the shit rolled under the couch, so it's been waiting for you to look under there, and you just so happened to look under there. There was a setup for it. You know, people need to realize that. There's these signs. You know, it's just like when a girl's with an abusive guy. There are signs that the guy is abusive that people ignore because they don't want to admit it.
Very true.
And then when it's too late, then they want to, oh, well, maybe when he threw her ass out the back of a truck, maybe we should have known that he was abusive then.
Yeah, that might be a telltale.
Yeah. But, you know, that's just how I feel about that. As crazy as it sounds.
But do you? I just feel like that could have been just a setup altogether. I mean, I'm not going to say one way. I mean, because I know kids were involved in shit, but
I mean, if you,
I don't know.
I mean, there's theories that you know he knew what was going on. People can put connections on to anything. You know, I just say when situations like that happen, they don't just happen out the blue. You know, there's something that sparked that. And the problem is we don't spend enough time trying to figure out what sparked that. And, you know, we could figure out what sparks these people to snap. We can nip that in the bud. And like I said, it's as simple as someone just noticing. You know, it's like when you're having a bad day. If you're having a bad day, you've been having a bad day all day. You're just pissed off. And you come home, and the first thing Chrissy does is she rubs your shoulder and says, tell me about your day. Someone's acknowledging the fact that you had a bad day. So instead of it being pent up inside, you get to release it and it relieves your stress. But if you come home and you're still pissed off, Chrissy doesn't know this, she doesn't even ask you any questions, you're just going to be sitting there and it's going to be stewing in you. You're going to keep more pissed off because you don't have that release. So that's what happens. Just like, you know, when the kids get bullied and they snap. They snap because they get tired of getting fucking bullied and no one's saying anything. You know?
Very true.
That's my rant for the night on various things. I hope it wasn't too crazy.
So you about tired about the call it?
Yes, because I have to work in the moment, and as much as I love ranting and sounding like an insane old man,
you're not. You're speaking on points that fucking matter. You know.
Thank you. But you know, a lot of people don't. The stuff that you talk about, a lot of people don't want to hear because then they have to take a lot of stuff into credit. You know, a lot of people don't want to hear the truth because that means they have to go back and reevaluate choices that they made in their life. But no one wants to admit that, hey, you could have actually stopped this if you paid attention a little bit more. No one wants to hear that and realize that, because then you start going back and looking at all the other stuff you've done that probably could have changed if you paid more attention to it.
Very true. Very true. Well, we've enjoyed you on the show, Jack Nickelz. We definitely, want you to come back and shit. And hopefully we could do this another time where we just get a bunch of people together and just talk all kinds of topics, not just, conspiracies and shit like that, but just in general. Because I think when a bunch of people get together, or even 2-3 people get together, it really is power, and knowledge is power, and it really makes people think, okay, well, there's different ways. There may be a way I didn't think about it before.
Exactly. I love talks like this because no one seems to talk about it, and it's just stuff that, we all need to just be a little bit more concerned about, and not just the conspiracy stuff. It's just the fact that people are talking. How many times have you heard that people actually talk, and it's not like robotic or focused on one thing. People actually just let's put a topic out there and just bump ideas off each other.
Exactly. That's what it's about. It's about knowledge, man. While we have it, because who knows? It could be taken away 5 minutes from now. You never know.
Here one day and gone the next.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us, Jack Nickelz, and we'll definitely get together and do this again, if that's cool with you.
My pleasure. Always my pleasure.
All right. You have yourself a good night.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Warning. Warning, warning, warning. You are not real radio.
What the fuck you mean I'm not real radio?
Warning, warning, warning. You are just an online wannabe.
No, you're the wannabe because you're just about dead.
Warning, warning, warning. Real radio is played in a car.
So what? We're worldwide and it's going to be heard around the area.
Warning, warning, warning. I will self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's what happens when you came in the Stone Age.
We are
Cool Loco Radio. Yes, on Strip Club Choppers Radio.
the fuck. The people need to sit back, relax, and have a cold one.
Yeah, they do, but don't do it because he says so.
Who the
Do it
fuck are
because
you
I
to
fucking
say that?
Because I said so.
You act like you're the famous Chrissy D and shit.
I sure am.
And I'm just a fucking asshole named Ray Ray.
You are that asshole named Ray Ray.
Now, fuck you